Put your hair up in a side ponytail, build a time machine, and feed your llama, because this time we are talking about Napoleon Dynamite on Blind Spots and Second Thoughts. Welcome to Blind Spots and Second Thoughts. I'm Dan.
I'm Heather.
Yes, you are. And here we are, recording our first show.
I'm very excited and scared to be here, which is actually a movie reference.
Is it?
It is.
Which movie is it?
Hairspray.
Hairspray. All right. That's going to be one. We're going to do that one in the future, aren't we? Okay. So first, before we get started, I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing here and what this podcast is all about. So we are a couple.
Yes, we are.
I like that there's a delay. There was a bit of a delay. You're like, I'm not really sure if I want to agree with that.
No. I am proud to admit it.
Are you? Okay. But I have seen a lot of movies.
I have seen a few movies many times, but have missed out on a lot of classics.
But one of the biggest blind spots that I had from a movie perspective was the Harry Potter movies. I had not seen the Harry Potter movies at all. And you are, I think, fair to say, a fan of the Harry Potter movies.
I am, yes. I read all the books and so, of course, saw all the movies. So wanted to introduce you to them.
And so we recently watched through all those movies, and that was the first time for me. And that was something that had been sort of a pop culture blind spot for me. But I had questions.
Understandably so.
Many questions. And there were lots of discussions that came out of that. And that sort of just became hey, why don't we record this? If we're going to be doing this, if we're going to be watching these movies together and going through this, then we should probably record it because maybe it's funny and maybe other people might enjoy listening to them and maybe not.
I mean, we think we're funny.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what matters. So let's jump into our first movie that we're going to be talking about. Let me take you back. It is the summer of 2004. George W. Bush is president of the United States and has invaded Iraq. But it's okay because the previous May he declared mission accomplished. So it's only going to be a short matter of time before everything is wrapped up there, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think that's how it's going to work out.
Other things that have happened in the year of 2004, a Harvard student named Jesse Eisenberg has just launched a little application called the Facebook. So no humanity-altering changes there or anything that's going to make the world worse coming out of that year.
No, I think that should go perfectly.
Right. No, everything is wonderful. Released in the wake of the third movie about some British kid who can do magic. I can't imagine that movie was popular and did any kind of numbers, but who knows? Just a week later, on June 11th, released alongside such notable movies as The Chronicles of Riddick, Garfield the movie, and the Stepford Wives remake.
I've seen one of those.
Okay.
Guess which one?
Garfield the movie.
No.
Was this little low-budget indie movie called Napoleon Dynamite. So what do you know about this movie?
I don't know very much about this movie, which is surprising given when it came out. It was the summer between my senior year of high school and when I started college. And I remember it being very popular with the people that I knew, but I didn't ever see it. What I know about it, I believe it's set in a high school. I know the actor playing the main character. I know his name is John.
Just John.
Is it Hebert? Hebert? Am I Frenchifying it?
You are. Well, since it's Hater, I believe it's John
Hater. Yeah. Who am I thinking of?
Stephen Colbert? I'm not sure, to be perfectly honest.
Okay. I know Vote for Pedro on the white shirt with red letters. There's red on the shirt. I think the main character's name is Napoleon Dynamite.
That was going to be my next question is what do you think the title of the movie refers to?
So I do think that it's his character's name. I could be completely wrong about that, but for some reason that is what I think. Or maybe, no, that doesn't sound right. Now that I say it, it doesn't sound right. But maybe he's weird, right? So maybe he has a weird name.
That is entirely possible. I guess we'll find out very, very soon. So you did say vote for Pedro. Are there any other iconic scenes or pop culture references, quotes, or anything like that that comes to mind when you're thinking about this movie?
I have a feeling that there will be things that come up when we watch it that I do recognize and maybe even will know are from this movie. But at this moment, trying to remember, the only other thing that I can recall is that there's a line about being parched. But that's really it right now. I haven't thought about this movie in a long time. I mean, just anything around the movie. So that's all I know.
Okay. So let me tell you a little bit about my first experience watching this movie. So I'm a little older than you, but this movie had a limited initial release and then it went kind of wider and wider as the summer went on. So it really had it really kind of gained steam as it went along. I went to see it after it had been in indie theaters for a while, and then it had gone to like more mainstream theaters. And so that was when I went. It's kind of I believe it was at the end of summer. I'm not sure exactly when it was, but it went to the point that I went to see it with one of my best friends. People applauded in the theater as soon as the main character appeared. So like there were other people who had already had this experience of seeing this movie. And so it was already kind of like a sort of a millennial Rocky Horror kind of thing already. And it was already to that point that there was just this sort of cult following of this movie that had been out kind of all summer and building on that. So that was my experience. So we went and we looked at each other and we were like, what is happening? Just from the first scene of this movie. It has been a long time since I've seen this movie. Actually, it's been a few years. So I'm actually curious. I'm wondering how well it's aged. I don't know, 2004. It's changed in 20 years. So just a little bit as far as the temperature of pop culture and things like that.
Just a bit.
Just a little bit, right. So, it's 20 years old now. So we'll see. I guess we'll find out if this movie has aged well or not. So here is my last question. Do you think that you will like this movie, or do you think that this will be a good movie? I guess those are two different questions.
Those are two different questions. Well, I like to keep an open mind, which you know that I like a lot of the things that I see for the first time. I have to admit that with this movie, I do think, I guess my gut instinct would be to say that I'm not going to like it. And maybe that's just the memories of when it was out. And, maybe I felt like I was too cool to be part of the cult following of this movie. And so I have that old bias. But I think it might be a good movie, like a well-made movie, but that I might not love it. But I'm open to being wrong about that.
All right. Well, I guess we're about to find out.
I guess so.
Let's watch the movie.
Back in '82, I used to be able to throw a pigskin a quarter mile.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious. Watch this.
What the heck are you doing?
That's what I'm talking about.
I better go.
How much you want to make a bet I can throw a football over them mountains? Well, if Coach would have put me in fourth quarter, we'd have been state champions, no doubt. No doubt in my mind.
All right. So now we have watched the movie.
We have.
What did you think?
Well, I'll start by saying that I didn't hate it. I thought it was entertaining. I wasn't counting the minutes until it was over. And I thought there were some funny things that happened. But I did also have some problems with it.
Okay. So you thought it was amusing.
Mm-hmm.
It was amusing. It
Yes.
was
It made
funny.
me laugh. Yeah, it made me laugh.
Okay. What were your problems?
Okay, so I guess the first one that I had was I didn't really know how I was supposed to feel about Napoleon, because going into it, I knew that he was kind of a nerd, kind of quirky. I didn't say that before, but like that was, like I guess I did know that as well. But from the very beginning, he's so mean. He's mean to the kid on the bus. He's mean to his family. And so I don't know. I guess I would have thought that I was supposed to have sympathy for him, and I didn't really, because he was just not very likable aside from being weird.
What I was struck with this time watching it, because he's not necessarily the nicest guy in the world, but I think, and this is hilarious watching this in the lens of 2024, is that I think that it's actually a really good portrayal of a teenager with autism.
I wouldn't disagree with that. And that is something else that I was going to get to, in the sense of looking at it from a more contemporary lens, is that he does seem neurodivergent. But it also felt to me like the movie is asking us to laugh at him for being neurodivergent.
See, that's funny, because one of the things that I think about with this movie is the characters do funny things. And a lot of times there's very awkward things that are funny to watch. But I don't think the movie is necessarily framing it in a way that the movie is punching down. I feel like the movie is sort of like, yeah, these people are weird and they're different, but it's not necessarily a bad thing, or it's not necessarily something that we're making fun of. It's just something that's kind of funny, but maybe you feel different.
I do feel a little differently. I did kind of feel like it was punching down to an extent. Just so much of the humor seemed to come from the characters doing weird things, but it felt to me like, we were supposed to laugh at that because how strange, how quirky. And maybe it would have felt different to me if it seemed like the weird characters were more sympathetic, but they were just so aggressive toward each other too a lot of the time, or they were nothing. Like another example, aside from Napoleon, would be Pedro, who just doesn't have any personality.
He is a cipher. Pedro is a quiet cipher.
So I don't know. It did feel to me like we were supposed to find it funny that they are so weird. And it felt a little bit like it was making fun of weird behaviors.
That's interesting. And I do think that when I originally watched it, it did kind of come off that way. And a lot of it felt like it was okay to laugh at these people. But again, watching it now in the lens of, 2024, looking back at it, it didn't feel like the film made you laugh at them. Like the film is just sort of like, here is a thing that happened. And here are these characters who do feel a little bit like characters, but they also feel like they could be real people. There probably was some inspiration in real life.
I'm sure there was, because some of the things that the characters do feel true to life, in that you may know someone who has behaved in a similar way. Maybe not exactly, but in terms of just doing something that's a little odd.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. It's things like when Napoleon is playing with the tetherball by himself and just...
But who among us has not awkwardly played with a tetherball by themselves?
Well, I haven't, but...
Oh. I see. No, I did. I used to do that when I was like a kid. I was like a weird kid, and we had a tetherball. And, when you're a lonely kid and no one is playing with you. Now, I didn't do it when I was 16.
Right.
I did it when I was 9 or 10.
But
I don't even think I've seen a tetherball since I was 9 or 10, actually.
Yeah, I don't remember the last time I saw one. But that's what I mean. I don't think that there's anything wrong with a kid playing by themselves with a tetherball if they don't have any friends to play with. That on its own, I don't have an issue with. It's the fact that that seemed to be the comedy, that we're supposed to see him doing this and think it's weird and funny.
And that's funny because I laughed because it is funny, but I laughed in a way of just like, aw, it's lonely. And it is inherently kind of funny to watch a very tall, skinny, awkward teenager with a haircut hitting a tethered ball by himself.
I mean, I can't say that's not true. It is a funny visual, but some things about the movie felt a little mean-spirited to me. And I really do think that part of the reason for that is because I didn't feel a lot of sympathy or empathy for his character, even though I was bullied myself. I was a weird kid. I didn't play tetherball by myself, but if there was something I could pick from the movie...
Yeah, that'd be weird if you played tetherball by yourself.
If there was something from the movie that I could see myself doing, it would be filling my pockets with tater tots, because that's something I would probably do now, to be perfectly honest. But no, I was kind of a weirdo, and I was bullied, and I just feel like I think maybe there's an expectation that we would feel sorry for him because of the other kids being mean to him, his family being mean to him, but he himself is mean. And not all the time. He's nice to Pedro. He's nice to Deb for the most part. But the first scene is him getting on the bus and snapping at a small child who is obviously younger than him.
His very first line in the movie, the introduction to Napoleon Dynamite in this movie, the kid asks him what he's going to do today, and he says, "Whatever I feel like I want to do. Gosh!"
Exactly. So right from the very beginning, I'm like, why is he so rude?
And that's what really clicked for me. And it was specifically, it's so funny that you brought up the tots, because the tots is specifically the moment that it clicked for me, that I'm like, oh, he's neurodivergent. And it was 2004. So we didn't know that that was a thing. Everybody, in 2004, everybody still thought that autism was basically Rain Man, or that one character on Boston Legal who giggled and jumped. We didn't really have that full kind of understanding of neurodivergence. And I do really think it's funny that if the writers and the filmmakers had based this on maybe somebody they knew or people that they knew, that it's probably neurodivergence, and they just didn't necessarily even realize it back then.
Yeah, I think that's probably very possible. And again, just to be perfectly clear about it, my issue is not with his behaviors other than being rude, which I think, neurodivergent or not, you shouldn't just yell at small children who ask you a simple question on the bus.
Oh, but I wish you could.
Well,
I wish it was socially acceptable.
Yes, we do all sometimes wish that, I'm sure. But aside from that, I don't take any issue with his behavior. My issue was wondering, what does the movie want me to think about this? How does the movie want me to feel about this? And I thought that it wanted me to think it was weird and something to laugh at.
I was fully prepared to think that maybe this movie didn't age well, but for the most part, I do kind of feel like the movie almost has sort of a Kubrickian distance from the characters, and it's not necessarily pushing you one way or the other. And some things that I laughed at as a younger person in the year 2004, in the Bush years, I didn't laugh at now, but I also didn't necessarily have a problem with. And it was one of those things where you see something, like here's a really good example. Rex's wife. Rex, the dojo leader, played by Diedrich Bader, his wife is an extraordinarily muscled woman. And in 2004, it was like, haha, big woman, or haha, she looks like a man. And that's not really funny now.
No.
But the size difference and the fact that, she's a paragon of beauty to Rex and he's very happy with her, like, that's kind of cute, and it's sort of sweet and adorable. And I think the movie allows you to see it either way. Like, you can see it in that lens of 2004, haha, muscle funny, or you can see it now like, oh, just, it's sweet. He really likes his wife, even though she's not conventionally attractive, that kind of thing. So I feel like the movie sort of allows you to do that. And I think in a good natured sort of way.
But I think there are other things in the movie that bolstered my initial impression that Starla's character was supposed to be a punchline. And the thing that really comes to mind to me in that respect is Kip after his girlfriend shows up.
I had that in my notes. When Kip gets his makeover, you sighed so loudly.
I did. As soon as the girlfriend showed up, I thought, again, I kept questioning it. I kept thinking to myself, what does the movie want me to think about this? Is this supposed to be funny that this is the girlfriend? And if so, why is it funny? Is it because she's black? Is it because she's much taller than him, which is
so much taller than him, which is pretty funny, actually.
And I did try to give the movie the benefit of the doubt in that she obviously knew he had the sign. I was going to say, did she know what he looked like?
I'm sure that, yeah, because they sent each other photos.
Exchanged photos.
No, he was PO'd because she hadn't sent him a full body pic.
Right.
But they had exchanged photographs.
Right. So she knew what he looked like, and I did try to give the movie the benefit of the doubt. And then the next time we see him, he is in black cosplay.
Well, no, the next time we see him is when they're playing footsie and he's got the amazing socks with slippers.
Yes.
And they're playing footsie in the park and just looking at each other with hard eyes. And then she gives him the chain.
The chain,
changing his life forever.
Well, even that, I think I probably reacted to that because I was maybe a little bit too primed to assume that the movie was making a joke out of the fact that she was a black woman and he is one of the whitest people ever. So maybe I was assuming that was the case. And so as soon as she handed him the chain, I was like, oh God, what is this?
He basically turns into Ollie G.
Yes.
It's one of those things that had been really funny at the time to just imagine the nerdiest white guy you know trying to be street and trying to adopt black culture and then doing it badly as well. And it's one of those things that was novel, but it also then became a trope and then became not really funny anymore. So it is funny to see that because that was one part of the movie that I had completely forgotten about was Kip's makeover.
Yeah, I do recall that I sighed very loudly, but
so loudly.
Well, the reason it bothered me so much is that why does she have to turn him into that? A black woman can't just love someone unless she turns him into a stereotype of a black man?
My takeaway was that she helped him find his inner voice because he was directionless. He was living at his grandmother's. He's directionless. He's jobless. He's in a small town in Idaho, not really doing anything with his life. And she helps him get out of his shell. And one of the things that I really liked that was a subtle moment is when he's getting on the bus and he has that little moment of hesitation. He's never left his town. He's never left Idaho. He's never even necessarily left Preston. And so this is a huge step for him. LaFonda is helping him get out of his shell and helping him find himself. And so I was prepared to be really skeptical about that relationship because, the joke was that she's a black woman and she's taller than him and everything else. And now looking back at it in the year of our Lord 2024, oh no, she's too good for him. She's got her shit together. She knows what she's doing. And the joke is that Kip does not deserve her. Kip is the loser here. Kip is the weird one. She's this amazing specimen of a woman and she is deigning to meet this meek little nerd from Idaho and sees something in him that we, the audience, don't even necessarily see.
I think you're giving the movie a lot of grace
I might
right now because, you just touched on two of the things that I did think about because really when she first shows up, I also immediately thought she is way too hot for him.
Right.
That's my first read on the situation. But then also, it does make me wonder because we don't learn that much about her. And that's a problem that I have had with movies or with media and the representation of women in movies. So I question, why is she there? And then why does she change him? Because she knew presumably who he was, what he looked like. So I'm just like, why would she go all the way to Idaho to then totally transform him? I don't understand what her motivation would be. And I'm probably asking too much of this character. I know.
You were asking a lot of this movie because in fairness, really, we don't learn a lot about any of the characters.
That's true. That is true.
The most we learn about anyone is Rico, and he is a very tragic figure, a creepy one, but a tragic one. But he's probably the character we learn the most about other than Napoleon. And honestly, half of what Napoleon says is a lie or an exaggeration.
Right.
Okay, so this movie was from first-time filmmakers Jared and Jerusha Hess, a married couple who met at Brigham Young University. This movie had a $400,000 budget, and it was based on a short film that they had previously made that featured a lot of the same characters and plot points as the full movie.
That makes sense to me because another feeling that I had was that it didn't really feel like there was a full plot.
Right. No, this movie, it does feel a lot like there are sketches. It's almost like it's
vignettes is what I was thinking.
Yeah. Like it's just the climax of the movie is the election, and you don't even find out about that until the halfway point of the movie when at the dance Pedro looks up and sees the poster. Right. There's no real through line. Like the first half of the movie is sort of leading up to the dance.
Yes, but it being a short film first actually does explain that because it would work as a short film, it feels like. Not that it didn't work as a full-length movie, but I did have that sort of vignette feeling.
Okay, so we open on Napoleon Dynamite, the awkward teenager, possibly neurodivergent, in Preston, Idaho, waiting outside for the school bus with his trapper keeper, which I thought was really interesting because now they're like retro and now people are really excited. In 2004, I think they had been discontinued or they were very...
I don't know if they'd been officially discontinued, but again, as somebody who was in high school during this time and loved me a Trapper Keeper in their heyday, they had really fallen out of style by 2004.
You would not be caught dead with a Trapper Keeper. You longed for a Trapper Keeper.
I wish I hadn't had to give them up, but I knew that they were not cool. So I had them when they were cool. I had, of course, Lisa Frank, not to get too off topic, but Lisa Frank, really popular among millennial girls.
I do feel like Lisa Frank is topical because of the farting unicorns that Napoleon draws.
That's fair. But I did make note of the Trapper Keeper. I also noted that he was wearing a t-shirt and snow boots, as he does throughout the movie.
That is another point in the column of here's somebody who is neurodivergent.
Absolutely. I have no argument with that.
And then we see he is an unusual teenager playing with his action figure out the back of the bus.
I didn't understand that. What was the point of that? Going back to what I said before about him being kind of rude. He yells at this child and then he throws something out the window, clearly surreptitiously because he looks at the driver first. And I was like, cool it, guy.
So Napoleon and his brother Kip live with their grandmother, who is a character, and they also have a llama, Tina.
Tina, yes.
And I do have questions about Tina. Tina does not... Tina appears to be more of a pet than a farm animal, even though there are farm animals.
Yes.
They live in a farm town, it seems.
What does he feed her? A casserole?
He feeds her. This is the two things that we see him feeding her are a casserole and ham. And my notes are actually like, is ham an appropriate food for a llama? Are llamas not obligate vegetarians? I don't know.
I don't know enough about llama diets to say for sure, but it doesn't feel right.
I wonder, like, is it like...
I don't think a casserole is in any animal's diet.
Natural. There's no natural casserole predators running around.
Not to my knowledge.
And now I'm terrified of like carnivorous llamas running around, just making whatever noise a llama makes and trying to eat flesh.
Oh, God. The grandmother is played by the actress who plays Mac's mother in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That's not really relevant to anything, but I think I made a noise of, oh.
You did.
When I saw her. That's what I know her from. Her character is on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is known for just chain smoking and being barely communicative. She mostly communicates in grunts and not full sentences.
So she, the character, who is apparently named Carlinda, I don't know if they ever actually say her name in the movie.
I don't recall hearing that.
So Carlinda is in a quad bike accident. She's riding out in the dunes and breaks her coccyx
Yes.
She breaks her coccyx.
That well-known body part.
And so ends up in the hospital, which brings Uncle Rico into the picture to come watch his adult nephew and 16-year-old, even though they don't necessarily need sitting.
Right. Yeah, why couldn't Kip just be in charge?
Well, again, Kip hasn't found himself. Kip has not blossomed.
I'm realizing now there is the scene when they first find out that Rico is there and Napoleon says, why can't Kip just be in charge?
Right.
And Kip says, I'm fine if he stays. He doesn't want to be in charge.
Kip does not want responsibility. No. This movie is actually about Kip finding himself. That's where the real movie is. And it was happening in the background the whole time. It's really about Kip and Kip's journey towards self-discovery as an aspiring rapper.
That makes it a beautiful picture.
So while Rico is trying to enroll Kip in his get-rich-quick schemes, we meet Deb selling glamour shots and keychains door to door. Deb with the unique hairdos, a lot of the side ponytails and kind of the interesting...
Mm-hmm. Well, until the end of the movie
and
anyway.
The interesting looks, yes, until the end of the movie when she gets a more conventional hairstyle to make her...
Because now she's an appropriate love interest.
Right.
So she has to have normal hair.
Right, of course. But she is as awkward as the other characters to begin with, and just a little interesting. One of the things that I had forgotten about that just cracks me up so much is the line that makes her run off as she says something about she's trying to save for college, and Kip just yells from inside the house, "Your mom goes to college!" And she runs off.
That was apparently very upsetting for her.
Just hearing that your mom goes to college, and so she just runs off. Poor Deb. And I had forgotten about that, but that was one of the lines, again, that was, in 2004 that we just quoted incessantly.
Your mom goes to college.
Your mom goes to college. And I think my friend Thomas still says that to this day.
Fair warning that if anyone in our lives says that to me, I'm going to run away because I need to take the bit to the next level.
Right.
Also, I'm just as sensitive as Deb.
Right. I had also forgotten how dark this movie can be sometimes, because that bit with the cow bit, it was so funny though. It was dark.
It was, I do not love to see animal harm. Not that we see anything, but...
Yeah, the farmer is just very slowly loading his shotgun and then fiddling with it. And there's just this awkward tension with Napoleon just staring at him from across the street and the cow just standing there. And then the button on it is when the bus pulls up to block the shot and all the school children inside see the cow get shot in the face.
Oh my God.
It's so dark and it comes out of nowhere and it's so funny.
I didn't love it, but I can see how it could be morbidly funny.
Very morbidly funny. I loved it. I thought it was hilarious. And then it immediately cuts to the Happy Hands Club. Hand dancing. Hand dancing.
Was it sign language or was it just interpretive hand movements?
It was interpretive hand dance. That was not sign language. And I love how Napoleon is getting really into it, but also he is not synchronized with the others. They're all kind of all over the map.
Well, if it's interpretive, then...
But they're as a group.
I guess.
It's the Happy Hands Club, plural. Not
but they're each using two hands, so it still counts.
That's how it counts. There's two hands. So Napoleon does befriend Deb, and he also makes friends with Pedro, the strong, silent type, a transfer student from Juarez, Mexico. And then the preparations for the school dance begin, and Pedro and Napoleon are thinking about who they are going to ask to the dance. Pedro asks out the most popular girl in school, and is immediately told no via note. Oh, he does bake her a cake, though. He does ask her out via cake, which I thought was sweet.
It is sweet. No pun intended. For a second, I thought she might say yes.
But as a backup, he also asked Deb, which makes me wonder, did he ask the popular girl and then ask Deb without waiting for her response? Because Deb comes in like immediately
Apparently.
and says yes.
Did Deb also get a cake?
That is an excellent question.
I
We
hope
don't
so.
see. And I do hope Deb got a cake for Deb. Then Napoleon picks a popular classmate, Trisha, to ask to the dance. And so he draws a very detailed image of Trisha.
Maybe not exactly true to life, but he at least spends a lot of time on it.
He spends a lot of time getting the shading right on her upper lip. Meanwhile, we find out that Rico actually can be a good salesman when he's doing the Tupperware sales or the Tupperware-like sales. I unironically loved the scene where he was selling it to the couple and he pulls out the sailboat and the wife is like,
That was so weird.
it was so weird, but the wife is just like, I want that. That couple, those actors sold the shit out of that bit. They were like, this is our moment. We're never going to be in a movie ever again because nobody ever shoots movies in Idaho. So we're never going to be in a movie again. And they just killed it. They were so great.
That was a good scene.
Between the wife going, I want that. And then when he tells the guy to try and tear it and try and rip it, and he's trying so hard and he's just so disappointed in himself. And you look at the wife and the wife's a little disappointed in him too. It's such a great scene.
Followed by Kip running his Tupperware over with the van.
And I love the fact that the movie just smash cuts to Kip in the van, just backing up with the very confused woman just staring at him from her front yard. And he just backs up over it and it explodes. There's no explanation. It just happens. And so you're left to fill in the blanks, and it makes it, I think, so much funnier. So meanwhile, then that inspires Napoleon to get his own job at the chicken farm.
Yes.
What?
Just all those chickens.
That was a lot of chickens.
It was a lot of chickens.
I think that was an actual chicken farm.
Poor chickens.
That was one of the things, that I really think is interesting about this movie is the scenery, because after a while, everything starts looking like Southern California or Toronto in movies, because that's where they're all shot, or now Georgia, like everything looks like Georgia now. So you kind of forget that other places exist because that's the only biome you ever see in movies. And I really thought it was interesting, some of the landscapes and everything, because it almost felt alien. Like when you see that farmland surrounded by those mountains and dunes, and it's like, oh, does that exist in the United States? And it's one of those things because nobody films there, but that's where the filmmakers grew up. And so it really is interesting to see that now, especially looking back.
That is a really good point. I didn't think about that, but it had a very distinct feel to it.
Mm-hmm. One of those quotes that was said just endlessly in the mid 2000s was, "Did the chickens have large talons?" So the trip to the chicken farm is worth it, if nothing else, just for that line. One thing that stood out to me that I think is really funny now is watching that in my youth. I could not understand what the old guy says, the old chicken farmer. Mm-mm. No idea. I understood every single word he said.
Oh, really?
I understood every single word he said. And he basically is saying something about how he found some Shoshone arrowheads over in those mountains, is basically what he's saying.
Definitely missed that.
So Napoleon gets a lift from Pedro's cousins to pick his date up.
He does indeed.
You have thoughts?
They just seemed like another stereotype to me.
One thing that I think is probably going to make you less happy with this. Did you see what their names were credited as?
No.
They were credited as Cholo 1 and Cholo 2.
Oh,
and
goodness.
I saw that in the credits and I was like, well, they can call themselves Cholo, but can you call them Cholo? Jared and Jerusha?
Yeah, you are right that makes me less happy.
So they go to the dance. Trisha ditches Napoleon very quickly, and Napoleon and Pedro and Deb hang out together. Napoleon and Deb have their first dance because Pedro's cool about it. Pedro's like, I'll let you dance with Deb.
Because it's up to Pedro, but go on.
That's very, very generous of Pedro to allow his date to dance with his friend. And then that's when Pedro gets the germ of the idea to run for student council president. And that is the halfway point of the movie. And so that's when you find out, oh, this is what the movie's about. So Pedro is running for class president against Summer. And so that's when we also see Pedro and Napoleon doing Future Farmers of America stuff, the FFA. Are you familiar with the FFA
I've heard of it, I think mostly from the Chicks song Goodbye Earl. I think they talk about the FFA.
And again, Napoleon being able to immediately tell why the milk is bad by tasting it. Again, that's another point in the neurodivergence column. I was watching that and going, yep, that is a neurospicy individual right there. Then we meet LaFonda. LaFonda shows up.
From Detroit.
On the bus and gives Kif his urban makeover, is how it's phrased on Wikipedia, which I think is really funny.
That is funny.
Oh, and then we didn't even talk about the time machine. That's just a random diversion.
It is a random diversion. Another random diversion that you didn't touch on yet, and maybe you won't, is the whole thing about putting Pedro in a wig because he has to shave his hair off because his head's too hot. Do you think they just wanted to put him in a politician-style wig? It was so weird. And the whole movie was weird, so I didn't really care that much. But when he was like, my head's so hot, and I did these things and my head was still too hot, so I realized it was my hair, I was like, I have a head full of hair.
Does it make your head hot?
Well, in the summer, sometimes it does make my head a little bit hot, but he looked like he had a legitimate fever.
He might have. Pedro was not necessarily the brightest marker in the 12 pack.
Or the 24 pack.
Or the 24 pack, yeah. Well, we can't afford the 24 pack. Right. It's only a $400,000 movie. So Rico then, who had proven himself a good salesperson with the off-brand Tupperware, now starts selling Bust Must, herbal supplements to enhance a woman's chest. And the first time we see Rico pitching this, he's driving in his creepy brown conversion van talking to teenagers who are walking to school. He pulls up alongside of them, hands them a bunch of brochures for it, and then tells them if they want to try it, they can as well.
It was so creepy.
It was very creepy. It honestly, I mean, even in 2004, it wasn't great. I will give the movie credit, though. The girls had a perfectly reasonable reaction to it, which is they were like, he is creepy and this is making us very uncomfortable. And then the whole point of it is like Rico is now making life worse for Napoleon because now all the girls associate Rico with Napoleon. And so they slather all those Bust Must brochures on Napoleon's locker.
My thing about Rico is he didn't seem really creepy before he started selling the Bust Must. When he was selling the off-brand Tupperware, he seemed kind of charming. So that really came out of nowhere. And he just gets creepier as the movie goes on. There are other creepy scenes.
He does. And that's one of the things that I think it was definitely in 2004, what was awkward and uncomfortable is now like really creepy. Like that wasn't, I think probably now in hindsight, they probably would have made him more awkward and less creepy than just absolute creeper. But maybe not. Maybe they were going for creeper. And
I don't know. I wouldn't think so because otherwise it would have probably felt like that from the time that he shows up. And it really seemed to be a switch part of the way through the movie. But yeah, I did kind of note the girls' reactions, the high school girls, which I believe it's Summer and Trisha that he's talking to. They do react like, why are you talking to us? And this is kind of creepy. But after they see what he's selling, they kind of laugh about it. And now, like if that happened to me now, I would feel grossed out. But probably when I was 16, I would have laughed uncomfortably and...
Well, they didn't view him as threatening. I would think in the lens of 2024, maybe they should have viewed him as threatening a little bit. But no, we started talking about the time machine with such a random diversion.
What was even the point of that?
Part of it is Rico's character is just obsessed with his high school days and living in the 80s. And so it is all about him trying to reclaim that glory. I don't know why Kip wants it. Kip is also excited about the time machine as well. But it just happens to just be this random piece of crap that just vibrates your crotch, I guess, and electrocutes you. I don't know.
Well, I would think that the reason that Kip is so interested in it isn't necessarily to use the time machine for his own purposes, but just because he loves technology.
Oh, he does.
As we do learn.
He not as much as he loves LaFonda, but he still does love technology.
Always and forever.
Always and forever. Then we have the scene where Rico is talking to Deb. And this scene, I think, is the scene that I think plays way differently now, 20 years later, because I think in 2004, he came off as a little creepy, and it was like creepy, but for laughs. And in 2024, it's like, no, it's just creepy. It's not funny.
It was very creepy.
It really wasn't funny. Deb being alone and him kind of coming up, looming over her in the shot where he comes up behind her.
That is what made it creepy, because it would have been one thing if he had just said, oh, Napoleon told me that you might want this. But I thought he was going to make a move on her.
Right. It was the way that he comes up behind her. And then also the fact that he kind of went to her studio, question mark.
I don't know where that is.
Under
exactly.
false pretenses. I think that's her home. And so all of that, he's hanging out with a teenage girl because he tells her that he wants more glamour shots. And it's really just under the pretense that he's trying to sell her this herbal boob growing supplement. And that on its face could be funny, but the way that it's shot did not age well at all.
I was really grossed out.
It was creepy. And so that's what my note was like. Rico is a tragic figure, but still a very creepy one.
My note was Rico and Deb, nauseous emoji. So Deb calls him from a payphone, which I didn't understand. And I also didn't understand Rico has
I just assumed she didn't have a phone.
Well, maybe she doesn't, but I was just what I was wondering about that part. I guess I could understand. She just doesn't have a phone, so she needs to use a payphone. But there's the scene with Rico and Deb, and then we see Deb calling him from the payphone to basically yell at him for telling his uncle that he thinks she might want this bust must, which obviously didn't happen, but she's upset about it. And then Napoleon immediately goes outside and Rico is there. And so I was like, what is the time frame of this all happening?
She has to live within walking distance because she was selling door-to-door keychains and glamour shots. And Rico has his van. So in theory, if he just hopped right in his van and then drove home, and it takes her a minute to walk to the payphone, it's because she has to walk to the payphone.
All right. It makes sense.
Let's not impugn the internal logic of Napoleon Dynamite, Heather.
I'm very sorry.
Okay, so now we get to the climax of the movie, which is the election debate? Question mark? It's not really a debate so much as a... You were very angry about this.
Not very angry, but just... confused. And again, this is a me issue because this is a weird movie that just does some weird non sequitur things, and I should probably just have gotten on board with that certainly by the end of the movie. But no, it is not a debate. It is just a little very short speech about why they think they should be president, and then the skit that everyone always does.
Right, everyone always does
a political campaign. Which was not a skit. It was not a skit. They kept talking about a skit. And then
there was no skit.
Summer and the Happy Hands Club, they do a dance.
They do it.
Like, that's not a skit.
Again, and I love the interpretive hand. Like, there's a little bit of stepping, but not much.
No.
It's all in the hands.
It is, yes.
It really is.
And Summer has also learned the hand choreography.
Mm-hmm.
She's doing it as well.
Yes. But then... Pedro gets up. Pedro makes a promise that he absolutely cannot keep. If you vote for me, all of your wildest dreams will come true. But apparently, that was enough. That and Napoleon's
Well, if your
wicked
wildest dream was to see Napoleon dance, then he fulfilled that promise.
He did.
And everybody seemed very excited about it, except for Summer and her boyfriend.
Bully boyfriend.
Yeah.
What?
He's really unattractive. Sorry to that actor. I'm sure it was just the costume and makeup and hair design.
And hair and his face and everything.
No, I'm sure his face is fine, but his hair was very spiky, and I don't want to relive those days.
the Napoleon's wicked dance moves pay off. We didn't even talk about, I love the scene so much when he first gets the dance tape and the door is just partially open and you hear him talking. The tape is like, are you ready to dance? And he just goes, yes, in his room by himself. It's just something that's so funny about him just out loud, just deadpanning. So much of it is just the deadpan delivery and everything. Then we just see a very quick montage of everyone being happy, including Rico. Rico gets a happy ending, which I don't think he necessarily deserves.
A very bizarre happy ending.
His ex-girlfriend kind of just bites.
Oh, was that his ex-girlfriend?
Yeah, his ex-girlfriend that he had.
How do we know that?
I think we just assume.
Oh, okay.
She shows up on the bike and he tearfully welcomes her. The grandmother is making out with Tina the llama.
I've kissed a pet. I can't really falter.
Yeah, have you kissed a llama?
No.
Well, then we see Pedro's family has thrown him a little party because he was elected president and he's very pleased with himself and maybe a little sinister since he now knows how to manipulate the system. Mm-hmm. He's now come to power. I kind of feel like his smile is a little threatening even, maybe.
I didn't get that, but I like it.
And then we have our final scene with our protagonist, Napoleon. I do wonder, does he qualify as a protagonist? Did he move the plot forward? I guess he sort of did.
I think so.
Does he count as the protagonist of the movie? Because it's really Pedro is sort of the one who drives the plot. He's
That's
the one who
a good
kind
point.
of pushes everything. Napoleon is just kind of there. He's like a third-party observer. Now we have to do a serious literary analysis of Napoleon Dynamite and the character's motivations.
Yeah, I started out by thinking, oh yeah, he influences the plot. But now I'm thinking, actually, he doesn't really do anything except show up and yell at people.
Throw.
Oh my God, that was the funniest scene in the movie to me. And even when the first one hits the windshield and Rico does that high-pitched little shriek, I thought that was very funny.
And then they're both just, Rico's on the ground and then Napoleon just jumps over the fence and falls. And then he just keeps running, gets up and he just runs off because he runs everywhere. And another point in the neurodivergent column, Napoleon just running everywhere regardless of how it looks or the consequences or anything. But then Napoleon and Deb get their final scene. Deb with her now much more acceptable to...
Yeah.
Deb has changed her appearance.
Normal hair. It's Ali Sheedy in the Breakfast Club.
But she doesn't change for Napoleon. She doesn't change for anybody. If she's changing for anybody, it's for you, the audience. It's to make you feel more comfortable with Deb as a character.
I felt comfortable with her when she had a side ponytail.
Right. Don't change, Deb. Be your authentic self.
Exactly.
Even though your authentic self has side ponytails.
I mean, it's a choice.
It is a
bold choice.
It is a choice.
But Deb deserves to be happy even if she has a side ponytail, which she does kind of get the side ponytail back in the post-credit scene, but it's not fully on the side. It's now like a little bit more of
Well, that's the formal.
Yes.
That's the formal wedding ponytail.
Of course.
So Napoleon and Deb have their sweet little scene where they reconcile and Napoleon drops the absolute banger of a line, "I caught you a delicious bass." And now that we've watched this movie, I am going to say it to you ad nauseum.
I look forward to that.
Look forward to that because it is definitely going to be happening. And then they have their sweet little tetherball game over When in Rome. He finally has somebody to play tetherball with. And then hilariously, he's not even trying to let her play.
No.
He's like, no, he is going full throat. I am going to win this tetherball game.
That's what you would do.
And then that is what I would do. That is exactly what I would do. We should play tetherball now. and then their little high five at the end, which
that
is just
cute.
a nice little
that
touch.
was very cute. I liked that.
So then the movie ends, and then there is a 2 months later post-credit sequence.
The longest post-credit scene I think I have ever seen.
Kip and LaFonda's wedding. A cute scene.
I think it's interesting because I did think it was funny. LaFonda's brother, I'm assuming, who puts his head in his hands when she says "I do," which could be. There are different ways to interpret what that is as a storytelling device. But then her parents seem happy.
Her parents seem very happy. Everyone else seems Everyone else seems very happy for them as a couple, except maybe the grandmother. But, you know, everybody's having a good time, and it seems like a very sweet wedding. Kip's amazing song, Always and Forever.
Mm-hmm.
I had forgotten about it, but I do remember probably knowing most of the lyrics to that song in the mid-2000s. I'm not going to lie. Always and forever.
I think it's beautiful.
It is such a beautiful expression of their love. And then Napoleon rides up on a horse, a honeymoon stallion that he had just finished taming. And he gives the horse to LaFonda and Kip. And again, LaFonda takes the reins. And again, that's one of those things that I think in 2004 you would have left like, oh, he's not very manly. And now you kind of look at it and like, oh, it's cute. Like they know they're comfortable with themselves. And I think the movie does a really good job of just letting these events play out kind of without judgment. So it's one of those things where the movie has aged well. And in a lot of ways, it's funny. I didn't think that, but it's almost like Napoleon Dynamite is kind of a Rorschach test, isn't it? It really, it's what are the things that you find funny about it? And how does that reveal you as a person?
I think there's validity to that. I will stand by my feeling that the movie did not present things completely without judgment. I think some of the time the expectation is that the behavior was comedic. And if it's just kind of unusual, neurodivergent, quirky behavior, you know, whatever umbrella it might fall under, I don't necessarily think that that should be laughed at or that that is inherently comedic. But I also don't think that the movie aged terribly. I do think that you can watch it and find things that are funny, even 20 years later. And even the things that I took issue with are not so egregious. It was more just a feeling that I had that the movie was saying, isn't this funny? I did think maybe there was some punching down, but it certainly did not punch down in the way that a lot of other movies, especially from the time, did.
Oh, yeah.
So
no.
there are many movies from the early 2000s that have aged horribly.
Right.
And I had issues with this one, but I wouldn't categorize it as aging horribly.
Well, there you go. Okay, so now you have seen Napoleon Dynamite.
I have, and there was not a line about being parched, which I looked up after the movie ended because I was like, that was the one thing I was sure about. Vote for Pedro, and then a line about being parched. It was John Hader's line in a different movie.
And you might be the only person who's seen John Hader in other movies.
No, I didn't even see it. I just absorbed it through.
What movie was it?
Just Like Heaven, I think is what it was called. I knew people that quoted it. But anyway, now I have seen Napoleon Dynamite. I actually didn't know as many lines as I thought I would. You know, I thought once I heard them, I would be like, oh yeah, I knew that. I'd heard that before. It didn't happen as much as I thought, but there was one line. It was in the dance scene when Napoleon says to Deb, I like your sleeves. They're real big.
Well, any other final closing thoughts on Napoleon Dynamite, this deep character study that reveals more about the viewer than it does its own characters?
No, I don't think so. I will say, all in all, I'm glad we watched it.
Oh, good. It was fun to revisit, and this was really great. So thank you, listeners, for joining us on this journey. Once again, I'm Dan.
I'm Heather.
And this has been Blind Spots and Second Thoughts. Thanks for listening.